Hello everyone. We're really happy to see you today. I am going to ask you to turn off your video and the microphone, please. Otherwise, I will need to mute you. Unfortunately, it's the rules of the talk, and please do this for yourself. For us, it will be very, very convenient if you're not on video or not speaking during the talk. We will have the Q&A afterwards when you're going to have the opportunity to say hi. So please turn off your video now. This would be really, really helpful.
Do they have to turn off the microphone as well, or do you mute them?
Microphone as well, please.
Yeah, turn off video, turn off microphone, and first we'll have the presentation. So everybody turn off video, turn off microphone, and then put it back on later.
Yes, hello everyone. I'm just going to say a short introduction. I'm from Gazelle Art House. Thank you for joining us for Tuesday Talk, which is called Muse in Contemporary Art. It is hosted in the framework of Jane McAdam's Freud solo exhibition at Gazelle Art House in Baku. The exhibition is called We Are They, where ID was Ego Shall Be. We are very excited to welcome our speakers today, Jane McAdam Freud, the artist who we proudly represent. In her current show, Jen presents a new body of work inspired by the origins of painting alongside psychoanalytic concepts of the shadow. In conversation with her will be art historian Miroslava Ratislova, and was supposed to be Ramona Novikov, who is unfortunately won't be present today due to the health condition, and we wish her a very speedy recovery. I'm gonna let other participants now, and please everybody turn off your video and the phone. This is very important for us to have a
microphone. Yeah.
I wanted to share some other rules so that the discussion goes uninterrupted. Keeping muted is the most important one, both video and audio, but please feel free to ask questions in the chat. We allocated the time in the end of the talk when speakers, Jane, first of all, are going to answer them. The conversation will also be recorded, and we will release the video on our platform later on. Thank you again, and I'm gonna Jane is going to take over with her presentation.
Okay, can I just say, oh yeah, oh sorry, carry on. Yeah.
I'm done now, so I'm gonna share the presentation, and Jane, please go ahead.
Oh, wonderful. Well, first and foremost, I'm thrilled that you're able to listen to this. I'll start straight away. So this is a view of the exhibition at Gazelle Art House. Next slide. Tina. It's called, this talk is called The Muse in Contemporary Art. And Ramona Novi is one of the presenters, but she's gone down with coronavirus extraordinarily. We spoke to her on Friday. Now it can hit you so quickly, but she's going to be fine. And Miroslava, who might be joining us later, or otherwise we'll ask questions on her behalf. Next slide. So, what does the concept muse mean to me? The muse, historically seen and understood through the male gaze, meant that the female model was primarily seen through the male gaze. There was an object of desire involved. Go back. I think it's such a beautiful painting, a girl with the pearl earrings, obviously an object of desire. Next slide. But less known, also, the reverse is true. Go back. So, One of the first muses in the history of portrait painting was, in fact, male. And it was, in fact, made by a female artist, as described by Pliny the Elder in Natural History, circa 77 AD. She, as the young female artist, drew around the shadow of her soon-to-be departed lover so that she could remember him when he was gone. And female artists, but they often contemporarily use themselves as a muse. And some examples of that might be Celia Paul, Maggie Hamlin, and Tracy Emin, among many others. So this next slide, it shows one of Celia Paul's self-portraits, not very flattering, but I think it's the way of women. Next one, Maggie Hamlin, she depicts herself smoking, and really you can barely see the one eye, the nose and mouth, and if you focus between the cigarette fumes, there's a glass of, it looks like beer in her hand or something. Next slide. Now, Tracy Emin, very interested in money, has made this work called Money Photo. It's sort of between her legs, you know, which is interesting. And she calls it spider legs. So it's like everything is a limb for her. The next slide. Also, it doesn't have to be flattering, the self-portrait. In this case, you find it a lot, particularly with female artists, that they're confessional. They show every aspect of their lives. So this slide shows Tracy Emin's self-portrait, reclining, drunk. But what a beautiful little drawing. Next slide. My understanding of the term muse translates to object or event of inspiration. So objects inspire me, but so do events. The event is sometimes more compelling than the object. However, for my works in Baku, I did use the figure of the other, but not in the traditional way. Next slide. The figures seem to literally climb onto the walls, or we might use the term climb the walls. They were made from drawing around the actual person, not from the image of the actual person. So not from a photo, not from looking at the person and then translating them into a two-dimensional image, but literally drawing around them. The difference is about the level of participation by the model, or we might say by the muse. Next slide. I use the model and the energy from the intimacy created by close proximity. The colour choice and the nature of the marks also feels instinctive. The consequential Harlequin image creates its own rationale. Oh, sorry, there should be an E on the end of that word, rational. Its own rationale. This rationale is open to viewers' interpretation, which is always a projection of sorts. So people bring to the image what they need to bring to it, or choose to bring to it, or unconsciously gets awakened in them. So it's not really to do with me once it leaves my hands. Next slide. Next slide. So, Liberty, she was the muse for Delacroix, in keeping with his times. Note, she's trampling the corpses while waving her victory flag. Today, the coronavirus defines our times. And my figure waves not the victory flag, but the white tissue of surrender. Heads and heads, which way is up? In our upside down world, we ultimately look in alternative directions to find our muses. I feel myself reflecting more about everything including the sort of facts that seem to have previously been set in stone. Libidinous levels title. These colours and shapes remind us of our past, our tribal and phallocentric ancestors, and the way we have recorded history. I'm interested in exploring the life of the mind and instruction, not from our societal conditioning, but from our deeper knowledge sources, and one of these being the unknown known. What Freud called unconscious knowledge, or the id, the knowledge that explains many aspects of instinct. The tribal peoples knew many things. We discarded those things because they didn't fit into our justifiable need for proof, the scientific model. I think it's crazy and very sad that we did that. Did we throw away the baby with the bathwater? Next slide. Next slide. The idea of people means different things to different cultures. This word people seems to be inclusive people, but is it? Our world increasingly uses divisional devices in so many areas. It's like a game in which people are united, but only in directing them against something or someone else, another tribe. Examples might be BAME as separate from non-BAME, old as separate from young male, as separate from female, and West from East, like Eastern ways are separate from Western ways, etc. Next slide. The light going out. This is a painting, which I then made a video of. Next slide. Next slide. There's no sound on the video. Can I talk about that? Go back to the video page, the writing. There's a shocking new undercurrent where we now accept that we are all in the lap of the gods. As far as life and death is concerned, this work is also, this video installation has the light ticking on and off. It's quite shocking to acknowledge the desensitization occurring in the light of so many deaths being ticked off like a metronome, which just goes on ticking. Glass of wine. To forget, to block out, to split off from reality, a defense mechanism which could be said to be either useful or insane, but in reality, perhaps a bit of both. We all reflect now, we have the time, and somehow we hide the facts from ourselves to remain positive. It reminds me of the hidden ablutions of the past, which artists like Renoir, Picasso, Degas, Cézanne, among others, forced us to address through their painting. The id represses and the ego confronts. Yeah. My version, a male bather, is here reflecting while in a bath of tepid water, letting his floating id reign, while the sensible ego, the conscious, is finding its way into his meditative contemplation. This view of Peter, my husband, my muse, is one I see every morning while we bathe at either end of the tub. Eros and Thanatos, title of this one. Psychologically speaking, the bath of tepid water, albeit comfortable, is said to be akin to death. Freud said that the death instinct, i.e. Thanatos, could be substituted for self-preservation. I wonder if he meant that the death instinct cannot be allowed to operate from within ourselves, as it would be deadly, the death instinct. Therefore, explaining why in society this instinct is projected onto the other. In other words, an explanation for conflict, which seems to happen at these critical times. This one's called superego. You can see it written on the image. The superego is the critical parent which resides in all of us, mediating between the drive to do and the decision itself, which the ego is responsible for. We could apply this Freudian theory to the wider context of society, with the battle between the instinct and the intellect. My ongoing muse, as you can no doubt discern, is Freudian theory, an event itself that changed the way we think about ourselves, an event that cannot, now it's known, ever be unknown. I think that's the end of my slides. So we're on to the discussion part. From Miroslava, the talks.
Right. I think Miroslava, if you hear us, if you are somewhere here, please request the video. We'll be happy to let you in, because I don't see you here. But
Tina, Tina, she's Miroslava. She's the top line, last one.
All right.
You see? Top line, last one. Keep going. I'll say stop when you arrive at Miroslava. You see?
I found her, and Miroslava, I asked you to turn on the video and the sound, if you could do that.
Sound?
The sound and the video. That's perfect. Okay, I'm gonna mute myself now.
Here. Do you see me?
Yes.
Yes, perfect. I was blocked.
You're here now, so let's have your questions. Are we ready to start, Tina?
Okay. Right. Yes, sure. Miroslava, would you like to take over your questions and just go ahead? I'm also happy to ask questions that Ramona sent to us. Whatever you feel is better. I think both of you can discuss first, because you had beautiful references to Jane's work, and I think it would be great to hear them. So Miroslava, if you would like to start with your questions, that would be great.
Okay, I can start. So I have a few questions about your pictures, Jane. At first is about after Delacroix. Delacroix uses contrast, and his female, Liberty, is trampling the dead bodies while waving her victory flag. Liberty is the winner. How many dead will be needed? Hope for a better tomorrow. The opposite is your figure. It is waving the white tissue.
Miroslava, Miroslava, can I ask you to stop after each question? Then I'll answer that small part. And
okay.
So, as I understand, you're asking about, in reference to this painting, Delacroix's Liberty, where we have, yes, the figure with the breast out, trampling the dead. you're saying how many dead will be needed for a better future. It makes me think immediately of the coronavirus. And I feel really shocked by this question. I'm so sorry, but I feel it so emotionally. I can't answer how many dead is needed. None, in my opinion. Everyone has a right to life. Even in this case, I find it shocking she is trampling the dead bodies. So there is another part to your question. I do feel that that liberty is seen through the male gaze. I do remember you saying that she's not an object of desire, but I feel she is. She's seen through the male gaze as an object of desire. After all, in Klein's theories of the part object, so that's Melanie Klein, a psychoanalyst, and it's a branch of Freudian theory. In Klein's theories, the breast is the mother. It is the mother, part object. And the milk is the object of desire. We all desire it as infant. We never forget this. It's in our memory. Perhaps these breasts exposed in this painting express not so much liberty's emancipation, but more Delacroix's unconscious desire for the breast, which was his first love object, his first object of love, of desire. So you have a next part to your question.
Okay, thank you, Jane. And the opposite is your figure. It is waving the white tissue of surrender. Is coronavirus winning? Is it a depiction of human despair?
Oh, in the long run, there are no winners in any conflict, in any war, as we have been taught, you know, from our biblical training or through our parental training. And also through wars, there are no victors. The losers do better financially, etc. There are only Darwinian biological systems competing in the game. The interesting thing is that the drive for survival, the Freudian id, that doesn't follow the science. And the coronavirus doesn't follow the science, but it's doing very well, thank you, it thinks, I'm sure. I think we could benefit by allowing the use of our ids, i.e. our survival instinct, alongside the science. It shouldn't be divisional, one thing, the science or instinct, because the instinct is the drive to survive, and each person will have that. But we have been taught not to use it, to kill the instinct and listen to the science. It's ridiculous. We need both. We need both. The individual itself needs to keep his, herself safe. It's the drive to live, the drive to survive. Eros, love, life. Our next question was about heads up, yeah.
Okay, so thank you, Jane. And the next question is about picture, which way is up? You have chosen a model of children for this painting. Why?
Oh, yeah, the one with the children upside down. We'll wait for it to come on the screen because, I mean, I love this painting. And I know one of the models was your child.
Yeah.
And so I know you'll be interested in this picture. So it's called Heads and Heads, Which Way is Up? Now, I chose children for practical reasons, really, because I like to work life size, you know, I like to draw around the figure. And I wanted two figures that were going head to head, you know, because we could be considered a virus by the coronavirus. So it's two systems, biological systems, going head to head in a sort of battle, yeah, for survival. We think we are much more superior. It thinks maybe it is, but I wanted something beautiful because it's such a heavy subject. So I wanted beautiful children, alive, you know, but head to head. So they fitted on the page. Adults, you wouldn't get the full figure. It was practical and also aesthetic, yeah, the reason.
Okay, so the next question Do you think it is difficult for artists to find their muse in today's world? Everything,
carry on, yeah.
yes, everything is relative, everything is allowed. Isn't it more limiting for artists?
Yeah, I love this idea. You're correct. The less scope, the more creative one can be. Too much of anything is too much. I think it kills creativity. So what I've said about that is, I'm not sure in my case, though, as I can only do what I feel driven to do. The past, this seems to be the wrong answer to that. Is that more limiting? I seem to be answering a different one. Yes, it is. I think it is. Next question.
Is that why you are inspired by our past? I mean, the beginnings of art, for example, cave paintings. And
looking at my own origins, it takes me to the greater context. You know, I could look at my own things, but I want something more universal, something bigger than me. So, as females, in the context, I'm a female in society. As females, we have no precedent in arts history, not to speak of. And I think we need to acknowledge the reality of our ignored contributions that started in the caves. You know, we were responsible for cave painting. Extraordinary. And I think that's the answer.
Okay, thank you. So the next question is about the picture, the light going on. I think that all people are surprised by the current world situation due to coronavirus. They are shocked to find that death can come very quickly, like snapping your fingers. Do you think that this situation can lead to become insensitive or to a reassessment of values?
Well, you know, this is so interesting, Mirka, for the future. What will happen, you know?
Yes.
Yeah, you know, we may become desensitized to the previously feared idea of death. We feared it at one time. Life could become cheap. As though, you know, it's the same as in some countries, it is cheap. I'm just watching a program now about India, and it was the 2012 gang rape, where they didn't really look into it. Can I just say to people, if there's someone with their microphone on, can you turn it off because it's interfering with the sound? Thank you. So, and it is called, I think it's called Delhi Crime. And, you know, it just makes you realize that it might become like that, you know, all over the world with life being cheap. It's terrible, the thought. Not precious anymore. Yeah. So, very hard questions you have. You've got some general questions now, Mirka.
So, is your current stance towards painting an outcome and a response to the current situation? Is painting more instinctive than sculpture?
Yeah, so is my current response towards painting, my current stance towards painting, and now a response to the current situation, and is painting more extensive than sculpture? Well, in answer to your first question, I think it is my response to the current situation, and I think it's hard to explain how, but I do notice that the colour has come into my work. It wasn't there before. And it's not a response to the current situation. It is a survival mechanism to be positive in the light of the darkness we are seeing, experiencing. And is painting more instinctive than sculpture? You know, it's not more instinctive. But it feels cleaner, and it's dangerous now to work with hammers and have an accident, end up in hospital. It's cleaner. perhaps it's an unconscious in me, safety first sort of driving mechanism, you know.
Yes, I understand. Okay. The next one, do you use the model as a tool and at the same time as an inspiration?
Definitely, definitely, Mirka. I can speak about my ideas through the device of the model, you know, and the pose of the model, the colors I use, the objects I use to paint on, like the packing crate I'm using. You might notice the shipper's stamp, I'm changing it into the title of the work, the fact some are fragile, these times are fragile. I'm keeping as much as I find on the crate and adding my piece to make a statement. So the model, Perfect Muse for me, Peter, he's there every morning in front of my eyes. So, yeah, I make different statements about the Freudian theory that I like so much, and I think it was so far ahead of its time, people only now are beginning to really understand. You know, he went out of fashion for a long time. With neuroscience, he's come back into fashion because it was discovered he was right. His theories were right. So, yeah, that's the answer to that one. Next one.
Do you draw its silhouette or shadow, and do you complete the image with instinct and inner vision?
Yeah, I draw the silhouette. I mean, it has come to be known as the shadow because of the lady that first drew around her absent lover's shadow. But it's actually, it is the silhouette, isn't it? The person steps away and they're still there, a bit like the shadow. It is more like that. And the instinct is used after, because I get some energy from that person. It's not something I really understand. So I don't think that the first is about thinking, I must keep this at a certain angle. It's very conscious to draw around. But afterwards, I stop thinking and just try to be as automatic as possible. It's difficult, of course, because there's talking to each other, the rationale and the instinct. So I try as much as possible, yeah. But I think the instinct in the second part, definitely, more than in the first part, yeah.
Okay, thank you, Jane. And my last question is, how far does the model, its character, influence your work?
You know, totally. So everybody will have a different, something different will happen. No two paintings are the same. Sometimes I use a technique I particularly like if I'm feeling under pressure. But if I look at the paintings I've done around people all together, if I look at them all together, I realize that everyone has their, emits their thing. And it's my psyche that's picking up on something of them. I think it's more that than me projecting, which is unusual because most reactions are projections. But I'm trying to go beyond the projection and feel something that's genuinely connected with them. Yeah? So it's how the character impacts on my psyche. Thank you so much for wonderful set of questions. I like them so much, Mirka, and also for the use of your son as a model.
So thank you very much, Jane. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. We also have a few questions from Ramona Novikov, who unfortunately couldn't be with us today because of due to the health condition, but I'm just going to briefly introduce her and ask questions that she prepared for you, Jane. So
Yeah.
is curator at Oradea City Museum, which hosted a solo exhibition of Jane's works in 2019-2020. The show was titled Now, and Ramona mentions this word now best describes the drifting spirit of our existence and was so well portrayed in Jane's work. And Ramona also raised some really interesting questions that I'm going to ask now. So the first one is, we should ask how the formal contour becomes a vibrant void and what elements animate it. There are actually several questions in one, so maybe I should ask them one by one, Jane, and you'll just go ahead.
Well, it would be nice to have an image that went with this. Is it not in the presentation? Shall we ask it when it comes to it? Because it doesn't seem to make any sense without...
Sure. Just
if you go through the presentation and you read it and then ask me the question when it comes to it.
So we have a few installation shots of the Oradea City Museum, as you can see. If Jane, you would like to say a few words about that exhibition and about your work in that exhibition, to just give us some context, maybe?
Yeah, I think Ramona says it better than me. It's called Now, and it uses objects from the previous years that I put together. I had a residency in Harrow School, and I used all the objects I found around the school. And I had an exhibition called Object Instruction, where I felt I was instructed by the objects. But I feel that Ramona, she says it so beautifully in her presentation, and I think it does her justice if you can read what she says, if that's okay.
Sure, but yeah, sure. She has a separate presentation of hers. If you would like to go back to this, or we can just go with her questions to...
There's only 2 questions, and then we'll miss them. She's done all that work, hard work, with coronavirus. I think it'd be so cool to at least use it. It seems unkind not to. I have the words of her, but I can't read on my own behalf. It sounds vain.
1 second. So let's definitely see her presentation in a moment. Okay. Here we go. So she definitely did a great job by describing the show that you had in the Oradea City Museum, and let's just briefly go through this. If Jane, you would like to comment on anything, just let me know. But what Ramona says is that the exhibition was opened in 2019-2020, and it was entitled Now. And she also quotes you that in an interview granted to Maria Orsan-Telea, you say, my most important works are the ones that I create now. This is my favorite moment. If you're really alive, you can only live in the present. And definitely the present, in case devoid of any historical framework, has a strong undergoing dimension, resembling a multi-layered iceberg that piles up personal stories, obscure and not so secret histories, subjective mythologies, and fantastic projections. So Ramona says here that she started to rediscover in Oradea while visiting Jane's exhibition, the history and the irresistible power of the object, all of which were freshly resurfacing. There are a few installation shots here that I showed just now, and this is a beautiful conceptual exhibition that Jane put up in the Oradea Museum. And the artistic fields created by Jane within the exhibition at the Gazelle galleries that she refers to, the Baku exhibition, capturing their space the energies of the moments of grace that she has experienced under the sign of art with its underlying drives. And just like humans, they are beings of the interval, transient, and momentary. Those artifacts provide us with shelters in which we can practice the art of living in the most valuable moments of a continuous present. This roller coaster of spectral muses, orchestrated by Jane, is abruptly taking us to the very regions of the art of painting, and one should not forget the words of Pliny the Elder, according to whom the first painting appeared when the shadow of man was inscribed by a contour. Thus, painting came to life as a flat design representation in the negative already. It's definitely very beautifully said. And here we go to the questions. So if Jane, you would like to take over from now. So I have those few questions for you.
So yeah, I've split it. Yeah, I've split it. So she asked me, first we should ask, how come that the formal contour becomes a vibrant void?
Right.
And what are the elements that animate it? Well, it's quite a complicated question. But my answer is that I don't really see the paintings on the side panels as voids. Remember, they were crates, so they did create a space originally before I took the crates apart. But I don't really see them as voids, but more as part objects in the psychological sense, a bit like representations of the whole object, but also of the symbolic Kleinian part object that I mentioned before, like a symbolic object, a breast that represents a mother for the child. He looks at the breast and he thinks that is the mother, or she thinks that is the mother. It's a part object, one that stands in for the other. And the second part of her question, that one there, which is, how does the artist set up components? So how do I set up the components? These component objects, for example, used in the Oradea City Museum for the exhibition now, those seem to set themselves up. They seem to instruct me. So it's not the other way around. I look at them and they tell me how they should go together, not literally. It's just that feeling rather than thinking and responding. And I think all artists will know what I'm talking about. I think the third part of her question is, how does how do I trap the breath of primordial forms? What is my mood when psyche is summoned? Isn't that beautiful writing? Oh, beautiful, beautiful. I feel like a conduit for things bigger than myself. So something steeped in ancestral knowledge, coming from all sources, you know, rather than this being an allusion to God, as that would be blaspheming against her. I feel it is wonderful to be instructed in this way from the ancestors through the objects. I feel as though I'm doing exactly what I'm meant to be doing in the now, when I'm working. I'm doing exactly what I'm meant to be doing in the moment, in the now. I think that next question comes on slide 11, so we might want to see more slides first. Now, Tina?
No, I don't think there were more slides.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I didn't think so.
So the next question is,
what is your mood when psyche is summoned?
No, I've answered that one already.
Okay, so what is the ethical value or you bestow?
Yeah. So she asked, what is the ethical value you bestow upon the package objects, upon the crates? Or I think she means the crates. So the use of what looks like reverse canvases. So the crates, they look like reverse canvases. If we show those paintings perhaps now where I've painted on the crates, or it might be difficult to go back to them, Tina, because you've gone on to the new presentation. So the use of what looks like reverse canvases, the side panels originally belonging to the crates that were used to ship my works back to me by Gazelli, the use of them was symbolic in terms of there being deconstructed objects. So I like to work with objects, and these objects have their own dimensions. They look like reliefs, and they leave me free to paint on them, just flat painting, because the relief is already on there with all the wooden reinforcing strips. So the paintings envelop rather than ignore the contours, I think. And the next part of her question is, what is the role of emptiness in the existence of your objects? So the role is to show how the inside and the outside, remember these were crates that held my objects, the inside and the outside, the id and the ego are inextricably linked. A last question she asks is, what is the lesson of empty spaces and where did you learn it? Was it the fruit of a particular experience? So she's talking about the void there, the lesson of empty spaces. But the void, my answer is the void is continually used in art. And the latest use of it in a much publicized way, well, not the latest, but the one I remember, the latest one I remember, it was Anish Kapoor with his use of his patented blue color in its powder form, that when placed on the floor seems to create a void and vanish into the ether. Also, in the Tate Modern, he used a tube with a massive opening which spanned the turbine hall from massive hall, the turbine hall in the Tate Modern, like a great expanded womb. And I think that's it. That's the end of her questions. So we might open the floor. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And actually, we also have questions from just the audience now. You're doing a great job, Jane, sharing so much. Thank you. So I'm just going to read those questions that we have in the chat. The first one is from Jan Wolf. I want to ask about the mask as both a sexual disinhibitor, i.e. Venice Carnival, and how the masked person during COVID can be more aggressive as they are relatively anonymous. That's a very interesting question.
Oh, can you, it's all moved on too quickly, so can you ask that question again, please?
So, Jan asked about the mask as a different symbol. So first, she refers it as a sexual disinhibitor. I guess when people used it during Venice Carnival, it was one thing, and then it's a completely other thing when we see it now on people during COVID. And she also says that people are more relatively aggressive now as their face is partly covered. So do you want to take on that? Do you have some kind of comment about this?
No, I think it's so interesting. It's so interesting.
Comment. I think we still to uncover more about what it means to wear masks all the time.
People are more aggressive now. I never thought about that. No, I think Jan is a writer, a thinker,
yeah.
And I bow to her.
Great.
It's a brilliant observation. They're hiding behind the mask, just like the bullies hide behind the internet, behind the anonymousness of the internet. The mask means they can come out of the internet into real life behind the mask. We still know who they are. It's ridiculous but I love the concept, you know.
Yeah. I have another question then. Do you think there should be a personal connection with the person for them to become a muse?
Definitely. Although,
how was it for you?
I have experienced feelings of, oh my goodness, I must draw that person. I mean, there was a lady in the dry cleaners where I used to live. Oh, I had to ask her. Actually, it was not the dry cleaners. It was a food shop. Yeah, it was called. What's it called? Istanbul. Yes, I think she was Middle Eastern, but she looked amazing, drawable. She looked already like a drawing. I never felt so compelled. Maybe once or twice before. I never asked her. So no, actually, I lie. You don't have to know them. I mean, it operates in funny ways, doesn't it? The desire, the drive to draw somebody, to just look at them, nothing more. To draw is to look. And yeah, it happens. Oh, and there was someone working at Gazzelli. She had the most extraordinarily big lips that suited her face. She had a big face altogether. But I had to video her lips. I never used the video for anything, but I couldn't let her leave Gazzelli without those lips on a video. She was saying words, you know, like A, B, but I've never seen such symmetry and such a lipness of lips, you know, something. Can't explain it, but couldn't let them go.
Wow, that's beautiful. We have another question about mask, actually. This really interests people. So your thoughts on the mask as a veil and its impact on desire?
And its impact on desire. Oh, do you think people are more aggressive because they're feeling a little bit sort of more sexed up like that, you mean? Because of the mask? And they can, do you think it's that? Because impact on desire, look, aggression and desire, and it goes together. Yeah,
but the person who asked this question refers to mask as a veil, so I guess it's a little bit different approach to mask, but it can be interpreted in different ways.
So the veil's impact on desire, do you think? The veil. Well, it's meant to be sexy, isn't it? That's why the wife wears the veil, or some religions have the veil, so we don't see everything. We don't see the spots and the open pores, just the beautiful eyes or something, you know.
That's interesting. You were saying about Muse and your approach to Muse, and also in your presentation earlier, you were speaking about male gaze and how historically the Muse was mostly approached through a male gaze. So do you think in contemporary world it's shifted, and how much it shifted, or it's still very much perceived as a male prerogative? So do you have a view on that?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting question, because I think in the history of art, we didn't know about the women's art anyway, in any case. So we only know art through the male gaze in that respect. Everything was a muse that was painted by the male. I mean, in a very general sense. But I think anything can be a muse, even an object or an idea. And I think with more females entering the field, it's become a wider net, you know, the subject matter that's used, you know, like people drunk, self-portrait drunk, you know, do you know what I mean? So we have got out the body parts in a way that's not attractive. You know, the women have done it because we give birth, and of course it's not attractive, you know, it's not funny, it's painful or whatever. It's full of the bodily fluids. It's not an attractive thing, even if we pretend it is, you know. So I think with the women involved, the more life forces, more confrontation when we are allowed to be free, of course. Most women are repressed, and of course, but not artists, I think. Women artists are the least repressed.
Yeah, for sure. And we had another question. How much do you think, especially considering your work in the Baku show, how much the Muse participates? Is there an agency for the Muse as well in the resulting piece of art, especially for your figurative painting? What do you think about this? Like, this piece of art influence your?
You're breaking up a bit as you're speaking.
That's just about how much the Muse participates in the resulting piece of art. What do you think about this?
Well, you know, I think it hasn't happened, has it? There's performance art, or there's the artist and the model. But the model has always had this very strange part, in a way like the slave. In fact, my father called one of his main models to the end, I've got to say, he called David Dawson his slave.
Oh my God.
You know? And yet he must have loved his slave. He left him so much, you know. But he called him the slave. And I think it's touching on that role of the model or the muse And in a way, I don't like it. I understand it, you know, because it's the ideal, you know, it's like having a mother, you know, do it when you're very, like 2 years old. I want this, I want that, get me this, get me, it's lovely, but it's not very mature. And I love the idea that the model can really be involved, you know, really involved, stepping on and off, and, you know, stepping in, having some, it's a strange concept. For me, it feels different to just staring at somebody. But if you're asking them to physically move, to be active, to draw around them, they feel their real body has been involved, not the image of them. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, the traditional thing is just to look at someone. And it's not like, oh, you're interesting, step here, or be a participant here, you know.
That's a much more liberating approach. Yeah, I really like it too. Okay, so we have another question, which is about figurative art. So what draws you to figurative art? Do you think the work from the Muse necessarily needs to be figurative?
Not all of it is. I mean, the lights going out, that one with the fragile tape and the blobs of colour, there are so many in the new work that are not figurative, you know, that I showed on the slides. Go back, darling, I'll see which ones. You know, they didn't have to be figurative. I mean, the ones in Baku were, because it was part of a series. It was part of these figures climbing the walls that climbed up onto the wall for me and would go back onto a wall. It was important. It was a project. It was a series. But, you know, libidinous levels, the one with the Picasso dove in the background and the sort of the hands, and then the two small hands. It looks like the phallus. This was not figurative. I don't think it has to be figurative. And particularly the lights going out. I love that work. That one's not figurative, but I sort of think most of them are, but they don't have to be. No, I don't think. I don't.
Is there something particular that you like in figurative art, like something that you can express figurative art, for example?
I do like drawing. I mean, I've never really painted from Peter, and this is more traditional in a way, because I'm not drawing around him. I am looking at him back in the traditional way in the bath, and then I am making a small sketch and enlarging it, taking some photos to make sure the proportions are right, and then playing with the image. But, you know, it comes from an image of me seeing him and translating it. It's quite different, but it's conceptual, you know, it's to illustrate a concept, like Ramona said. I know it was Miroslava. She said, is it the model, the Muse? Is it just a device to illustrate your concept? I think she said something more or less like this. Yes, it is. It's a device, but it is using the traditional way of drawing from what you see. So seeing something, so this becomes the image, and then translating what you've seen without the participation of the model. But Peter, funnily enough, I think Faye, she picked up on this. He said, I don't want to be naked. But he meant his body. He is fine with the image. It's totally different. The image is not the body. So he doesn't mind about the image. It's not him. It looks completely different to anything with flesh and blood. It's like pop art, you know. It's full of colour, broad areas of colour, you know. So
yeah, for sure. We love this image too, everybody. Okay, so I think it's the last question here. Your large painting in the exhibition where you drew around the Muse, so I think it's referring to the Baku works.
Drip, drip, drip one. Drip, drip, drip. That one.
Yeah, I think so. Did you feel this a way of capturing their energy or spirit? And spirit.
What's the title of the work you're referring to? Is it the one on the flyer, the crime scene series?
I'm not sure what is the Claire who asked the question, which one she's referring to. So Claire, maybe you could type us the title or help us somehow. Oh, sorry. Who's this?
I'm just seeing how you send
Sorry, somebody turn on the sound. Please don't do that. Yeah, I'm not sure which.
I'll talk generally about them. Ask the question again and I'll talk generally.
So do you feel this is the way you picture the figures as a contour? Do you feel this is a way of capturing their energy and spirit?
Yeah, I think because they take up the position on the paper, if the composition is not right, I change it a little bit, but I keep how they are. I keep the way that they, if they go to the front or the back, or they move their arms in a certain way. If they seem very, very stiff, of course I direct them, but most people direct themselves somehow. They know how they feel comfortable to be drawn around, you know.
Yeah, so she said the large images in the gallery on the first slide, so I think it's generally...
Oh, yeah. No, this model, this one is a specific favourite model of mine. She's of African origin, Jamaican origin, and she's a very good friend of mine, and I ask her all the time to model because she used to do fashion. She... I don't know, I know her very well. I feel so comfortable with her. I can draw around her, feeling very free. And she makes such great, you know, if you look at her, she looks completely different to these, but she always makes a wonderful contour. I don't understand it. It's like she has some inner energy that it's like, my God, who would have thought? Who would have thought it could look like that? You know. Sometimes I work on them a bit because I really see some beautiful things in them. So when I have my favourite model, it's all easy. It's all easy, you know.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. So a lot of people are saying in the chat, thank you, Jane. It is very thought-provoking. Thank you for the exhibition. We love the exhibition. There are no more questions, I think. Just a lot of gratitude. Yeah, so I think there are no more questions. So if Jane, you'd like to say something else or just thank everybody.
You know,
the topic was great.
Oh, yeah. I think on my screen I can see most people, but not everybody, probably just half because the screen. But I could thank you all so much for participating. I'd like to bring Peter in, my muse, now to thank you all. Also, a lot of people know us together.
Hello everyone.